Hi, Sam Roberts here from Roberts Geospatial. Today I'm just going to show the new features in ProRaster Premium, release version 1.0.07. So this release has some bug fixes, and that's the primary reason for it, but also has a couple of new features. So I'll just open an algorithm here. So the first thing I want to show you is on the zoom button. So let's just review the application of the zoom button. So if I zoom in manually on the screen, I can hit this button to zoom back out to the extents of the algorithm. I can also drop this button down and you get a whole bunch of options. So firstly, zoom to the extents of your algorithm. Secondly, there's a new option here, zoom to algorithm unbounded. So we'll come back to that. Then you'll see a list of the coordinate systems that are in use in this algorithm. And if those coordinate systems have a known boundary, well then that the algorithm can zoom to, then they'll be listed here. So we've got our latitude, longitude coordinate system listed there. And then below that, there'll be the data sets that are in use in the algorithm. So you can zoom to the boundary of those data sets. So for example, here we can zoom to Gulf of Mexico, and there's some bathymetry from the Gulf of Mexico. Or we can zoom to Greenland, and there's Greenland. And right down the bottom, there's a zoom manually option. If you hit that, it comes up with this little dialog, and this dialog has some new options on it. So firstly, you can zoom to the extents that you enter manually. And these have to be in latitudes and longitudes. So if I zoom from minus 20 degrees, 20 west to 50 east, and say 40 degrees north to 40 degrees south. So that's approximately the boundary of Africa. So down here it says remember as something. So if I put in a name here, Africa, and if I click remember, then it's going to save that zoom rectangle and I'll be able to use it again. So hit OK and it zooms to Africa. Zoom back out, and then on the list I have a new option here called zoom to Africa. So I can go back to that zoom level that I set. Let's go back into that manual dialog. There's a second option here called zoom to the extent of a polygon. So if I go into that option and I can load a polygon. So let's load up Hawaii. So I'll remember this as Hawaii. It's put the extents in here, so I can edit these if I want. So I can change that. So let's go OK, and there we are, zoom to Hawaii. Zoom back out. Now I can zoom to Africa, and I can zoom to Hawaii. Let's go back in there again. Now let's say zoom to Australia. Now note that when you zoom to a polygon, it zooms to the bounding rectangle of the polygon. It's not clipping to the polygon. But there's another option here now called set the algorithm clipping bounds. So if I turn that on, then what happens is it's going to save this zoom rectangle with the algorithm, and the algorithm extents will be reset to the extents of this zoom rectangle, and also the algorithm will be clipped to that zoom rectangle. So if I hit OK, I'm now zoomed to Australia, but you can see that the algorithm itself is clipped to Australia. We're not seeing anything outside of that zoom rect that I've established. And now if I go zoom to algorithm, it zooms to Australia. That's now the established extent of the algorithm. If I want to go back to the full extent of the algorithm, that's where I hit zoom to algorithm unbounded. So I can go back out. Now I saved that zoom to Australia, so I can zoom back in, but you'll notice that it's no longer clipping. So it doesn't remember those bounds. So if you want to set the bounds again, you need to go back in, find your polygon, let's say Australia, not remember it, but I'll set the bounds, hit OK. Now we're back to a bounded algorithm. So if you're working in a particular area, it can be useful to set this bounding algorithm, especially when you've got different data sets in different projections, different coordinate systems, and with vastly different extents. By setting this clipping and algorithm bound, you can control the total zoom extent of the algorithm, so it won't ever zoom to bad extents. So it won't ever get confused about which projection it should zoom to and which extents it should zoom to, and that can happen sometimes. So it's just a useful option that gives you more control over the algorithm. The only other thing in this version, on the export dialog, we've just cleaned up these options around GeoTIFF. So if you select GeoTIFF, there's now 3 compression options. There's none, there's lossless using LZW, and lossless using deflate. I put in the LZW option, even though it's not quite as good as deflate, but some older systems don't support deflate, whereas they will support LZW or no compression at all. So these are options that sort of allow you to generate TIFFs that should be loadable in any old software that you have. So that's new on the export dialog, and that's version 1.0.07 of ProRaster Premium.